So we can have a look at this. So this is 2019, right? History Unit 2 paper.
I
Right,
think this
so
year
go
will
ahead.
replicate. I was saying I think this year we're gonna have something similar to the 2019 paper.
Oh, because of is it a pattern?
Not necessarily a pattern, but like based on the topics that have came for like 2021 and 2022, you can kind of eliminate certain things. And based on what's happening, 2019 seems like the most like which one they would give us back.
Okay. Because I noticed there's things like the apartheid and French Revolution. Those came a lot in recent years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably. So I noticed that
And
go ahead. Russian Revolution as well?
I don't think Russian Revolution is going to come again this year because it came for the last 2 years. I don't think they would repeat that again.
Okay. But even though I don't think you would have information that you can, do it if it come, right?
Then almost.
If it come, because I hear people saying that. Oh, I remember Ati tutor both chemistry and foods and stuff like that, right? And they were saying that, oh, this year is going to come, that year is going to come, and it's actually last year it came back. So we have to really, yeah, because a lot of stuff, a lot of different Cape subjects, it is the previous year, right, that came back immediately, right? The structure of the questions changes, but the same topics are there. But let's have a look at 2019, and since we said that it's probably going to be repeated, let's scour it to make sure that each point, right, is brought out. So document one, if the subject of industry has occupied their, which is the Frenchman on visit to England, attention a moment, it is only in reference to the fashion of some opera decoration. They have, to be sure, stood amazed at the thousands of vessels whose masts stretch out of sight along the Thames or in the docks. They have been delighted with the extent of the great manufacturing towns, the magnitude of the manufacturers, and the height of their chimneys and magical brilliance. I don't know if this is magical, but okay, brilliancy of the gas lights, with the daring bridges, I guess, daring bridges of stone and or iron, and with the fantastical appearance of the forge fires in the night. But they have never asked how came England. Well, it says how came England to have such a vast number of ships? How has she multiplied and extended her to such an amazing degree? And how created these towns? They have not thought to ask the causes of all this wealth and prosperity. All right, so this is society, manners, and politics in the United States. So this is probably from the U.S. A U.S. citizen's perspective. Yeah, probably from a North American perspective. Okay. So we're looking at the industry. What stood out to you in the document so far?
Manufacturing towns, the chimneys.
Okay, let me see. Is this able to the highlight tool? So you're saying that the chimneys, I would say the bright lights do encompassed into that, because light was a mere invention a couple years back, as it relates to this. What else you said? The manufacturing tones.
Yes.
So great manufacturing tones, right? And
Bridges, they want like the bridges of stone or iron.
okay, iron would probably be the one that stands out there, but bridges of stone are iron. All right. I would say the vast number of ships could probably stand out as well. How looking at the facts. All right. So wealth and prosperity would have reached Britain by then. So we're looking at document one and seeing what it's talking about. And remember your approach to all document questions. You analyze the document, answer the question with a reference to the document. Don't just answer the question by itself, right? But you guys know this already. You all are veterans. With reference to document one, outline three pieces of evidence of industrialization that could be seen by a visitor in England in the 1830s. We just highlighted them, but okay. What are them? What are they? Three
In fact,
pieces. Go ahead.
I would say the ships. If I were to write, I would use the ships, the manufacturing towns, and the iron.
And iron. All right. So, anyone else? What stands out? So we hear ships, manufacturing towns, and iron.
Wait,
Would
I have a
it?
question.
Go ahead.
Is Britain the one? Did Britain have iron like ores like actually in the country, or did they get it from like their colonies?
They had vast amounts of coal and iron, I believe. They didn't have as much iron as coal, I believe, but yeah.
Okay.
But remember that these are non-renewable resources, So at a point, they will have to start extracting from their colonial holdings, right? Especially India, which is so rich in some of these ores, right? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Technological innovations or inventions.
So we're looking at the inventions. All right. Mm-hmm. So we could talk about this. So we're looking at that was great. So we're looking at these three things. So the three things, the manufacturing tones. So I think of history as a story. History is really important and dear to me. So I think of it. I analyze it kind of like literature in a sense, right? So if you could think of sailing across the British Channel, right, the English Channel, I mean, right, into London, right. You're coming out of France specifically, which has not gone through industrialization. So even though France is known for lavish courts and chateaus, and those type of things, right? Especially beautiful cities of lights. The Paris is known for the city of lights and stuff like that, right? But it was still nothing in comparison to industrial Britain. So when you enter into Britain, you're coming out of these horse-drawn courts areas, right? And your candles and candelabras and your chandeliers and stuff like that, right? Into an area where you can see light captured in bulbs, right? As well as large factories, right, with steam pumping. You'd have heard steam engines and stuff like that. And as they said, they saw ships spanning across the horizon, right, and stretching as long as the Thames, which is the Thames is the river that flows through London, right? So you could think about those type of stuff, right? These things. So the first thing that Fantasia said was with the technological advancements, right? The steam engine, right? The light bulb, right? And these steamships. Well, the steamships would, be steam engine, right? The chimneys would be where they let out steam out of the factories. So the steam engine, right? The use of coal as power, right? And that allowed them to build lavish bridges and of stone or iron, right? They would have rebuilt London Bridge and stuff like that. So we can see the fact that England itself was shifting from this type of Renaissance type of architecture and technological state to one of a complete industrialized nation, or well, I said state or this, I'm just gonna say nation, right? To have diversity to the statement. So it's something like that. So this wealth and prosperity, right, this would have been a symbol of wealth and prosperity, as you guys know already, right? So you guys are able to write about these. The manufacturing towns would have been vast as well, because you know that the increase of manufacturing capability would have caused persons to move from the simple hand textile industry into large industrial towns, causing urbanization. So towns would have expanded and population would have boomed in England, right? In the different centers like Liverpool and Birmingham and London, right? And areas like those. So you guys would have the big picture, right? So everything fine there? Anything to add? Everything good?
Yeah.
If you want to add something, add it to me.
Yeah.
Not stopping you.
Um,
Go
the
ahead.
railways.
The railways. All right. So, all right. Okay. So you could speak about railways. I'm not. Let me read again. I'm not sure if anything referring to railways or trains were mentioned. It's not that you can't mention it, you can obviously answer it in that, right? But that specifically that you mentioned about railways cannot be attributed to document one. But that does not mean that you can't have it in your answer, right? Because you already have other answers that are attributed to document one, so you should be fine. You could talk about that, but it's not in document one to just make sure that you know that. All right. So the next question was what? With reference to document one, describe three internal factors that created the environment. So they're not talking about external, So I have to talk about Britain herself, because countries are females, I guess. Go ahead.
The emergence of or the development of banks and
Banks,
financial systems.
financial system, investments, and stuff like that. All right. How? How did that help?
So because of the whole, even though some other countries had a banking system, Britain's was more developed, and inventors and people who coined the different technological advancements, they would have been able to go to the banks with their ideas, and they would get loans and stuff to help fund their inventions, which would have in return helped to develop Britain more in terms of industrialization.
Wonderful. So she's saying that other countries across, other nations across Europe at the time, right, did have a developed banking system for some states, right? But Britain actually encouraged technological growth and technological advancements by allowing loans to go to persons who they felt, right, had the idea put in place. So they would actually fund these inventors to create these technological inventions, because you know that, to invent something requires money, right? So you're looking at stuff like that because it is funding that would eventually cause inventors to create the first computers, right, and stuff like that, right? Even though it was kind of made in France, but okay, stuff like that. So funding really helped the emergence of new technologies, which would have continued the industrial revolution in Britain. Right? Anyone else? We need two
If
more. Go
it's
ahead.
not clear, could the enclosure movement be used
Okay,
as an?
this. Okay, to know if it can be used, could you describe the enclosure movement? Describe it.
Okay, so based on my understanding, the enclosure movement was when the British, I think it was the government,
Mm-hmm.
they some of the land they started making them private property, and they were bought out, and a lot of the farmers, their land was taken away, therefore they had to move to the industrial towns because they kind of lost their source of income, which kind of pushed the industrial revolution since they had more labor. That's how I understand it as.
All right. So we could speak about the enclosure movement causing forced urbanization, migration from agrarian societies within the countrysides towards industrialized city centers. Right. So you're saying that with the development of the corporation within, I think it was the 1800s, right, the development of the corporation specifically, right, different larger corporations, right, and larger farmers started to buy out these small farmers, these subsistence farmers, right, and start to replace agriculture as a whole with commercial agricultural businesses, right? Now these farmers left with no way of gaining money and income, right, as you stated, right, would have been forced to go towards the town, right, or the cities for work. I'm not sure if you guys watch old, old rustic movies. Like I would sit down and watch like black and white movies. Right? I'm not sure if I'm just the odd one out, but there have been always, some shows speaking about, how a family lost their land and now they have to move to the city to make money, right, and stuff like that. It's something like that. So the forced urbanization, and as you said, it would have contributed to the amount of free labor available, right, for the manufacturers to hire. And it's not only that, right? It made more money, so it made sense for them to go towards that, right? So it makes sense. All right, that's fine. Anything else?
Okay, I had one where I'm not sure if it, in relation to like document one, when it was talking about the iron, as you said, I think where Britain kind of got their iron from other colonies, could that access to like resources also? Oh no, that would be
No.
external. I just remembered
Mm-hmm.
the
No, but you're not wrong, just turn that internally, right? The resources that Britain had, right, were key for industrialization. Because even the thing is, no, the British industrialization started with Britain's resources. And when those resources started to dwindle, they got it from her colonies. So Britain had an excess of coal and iron within the isles themselves. So that would have helped the production of the spinning jenny, right? And the steam engine. You guys did, I think, history throughout third farm going up. You guys did the industrialization and the different inventions of the agrarian and industrial revolution, right? So these engines started to be manufactured because of resources. Where resources are, innovation follows. Right? So remember that. Did somebody raise their hand? Go ahead. Go ahead, Fantasia.
So I was going to say natural resources as an internal factor.
Mm-hmm. Could you expound?
Basically,
Go ahead.
all right. So Britain had a large supply of coal, so and that wasn't used for most stuff. So I was watching something this morning, and it said that it's recycled. So they needed coal to run some of the engines, the steam engines, and then in turn, those engines would have been able to transport the coal to other places, so they can use it to power the other things.
Mm-hmm. So remember, the large city centers like London and Bristol and elsewhere, right? Usually found within southern England. England is a part of Britain, so England is not a country, just saying. Right? So within England itself, right, they would have to get these resources from the countryside or from other areas that are technically far away from town. You wouldn't dig up iron in the middle of the city, no. Right? So it makes sense. So in order to get the coal to somewhere else, right, they had to get the coal to use it to run the trains to get it to the city, right? Or to get it to the harbors, right? For running of steamships and the manufacturers, right? To burn the coal in the factories, right? And that would be attributed to the fact that there were large chimneys, right? And stuff like that that let out the steam and the coal and, well, the air, right? The smoke, I should say, right? So you could speak about that. So you could speak about the fact that they had to recycle it in a way, right? That should be good. And the bridges of stone or iron, the iron that have been getting, well, not the getting. I can't speak. Sorry. The iron would have been a part of your decision to use natural resources as a point, right? So that could be one. And when they talk about vast numbers of ships, remember these ships are made out of wood and iron. So the ships are iron too. So you could speak about that as well. Cause I can't burn coal on a wooden ship. That doesn't make no sense. Right, so yeah. So speak about those stuff. Should be fine. Right, so we're on to not module, document 2. Right? By 1750, there was hardly a trading or manufacturing town in England which was not in some way connected with the triangular and direct colonial trade. Alright? The profits obtained provided one of the main streams of that accumulation of capital in England which financed the Industrial Revolution. Alright? So the trade and navigation of Great Britain considered Glasgow. So this is from an English perspective, right? But coming from Eric Williams, Capitalism and Slavery, right? So Eric Williams. So let's see, what did we get from this? It's small, so you might have gotten everything. So what did you get from this? Okay, highlight.
The triangular or direct colonial trade.
Alright, so the trade, and these will be coming from our colonies, right? So the triangular or direct colonial trade. It can be or direct, because triangular would have to, be from different continents to the colonies to England, and then some came directly from other areas. This is 1750. Right? So that means that the 13 colonies was still a thing. Right? 1750? No, 1776. Around 1775, 1776, there about the Revolutionary War started. Right? Somewhere around there. So this would have still been taking resources from the 13 colonies as well as everywhere else, right, that they own. So we could speak about that. And then this accumulation of capital which financed the Industrial Revolution. So you could speak about the industrialization of Great Britain on the backs of enslaved labor, right? So that would be a wonderful statement to make. Let's see what the questions ask us. With reference to document 2, explain 3 external factors that accounted for the Britain's leadership in the Industrial Revolution. Go ahead. Anyone? If somebody else new wants to talk, it's fine.
Colonial exploitation.
Okay, go ahead with that. Colonial exploit. Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, it's saying that the reason why Britain was able to develop more quickly in terms of industrialization as opposed to other countries was the fact that they were largely in the business of enslavement. So a lot of the profits that they got off of sugar and other crops like coffee and so on, they would have used that money to invest in their developments.
Wonderful.
And some of the farmers put their money in the bank as well.
Look at the development of banking institutions and the strength of the British pound going through the roof based off of colonial, exploitation. Wonderful. Did somebody raise their hand though? I think somebody raised their hand. Okay. So anything else?
Wait, I have a question. Around what time was Britain in control of America again? I'm trying to make a link and I don't want to say something wrong.
Okay, okay. History student. Alright, wonderful. So when was the war? When was the Revolutionary War? Anybody can tell me that? The War of Independence.
What?
The American War of Independence?
1776?
1776. Right? This is 1750. Right? So from around 1600s to the 1700s, right? Almost a century, right? Britain was in control of the 13 colonies. I would have to say 1600s because in the 1500s they fought. They fought over France and that land. Complete control would be usually the 1600s going up, I believe. Right? More stable control over the land. Right? Which is, only the land which is east of the Appalachians. But yeah. You can make a link. Because
Okay.
you could.
What a nonsense.
Wait, hold on. I'm just saying one last thing, right? The document is taken from 1750 if you see in the source, so it could be helping you. This is still before the War of Independence. Go ahead.
Okay, so my teacher taught us that one of the reasons why the colonies like of America wanted their independence was because at one point Britain was kind of controlling who and who they could trade from, as in like Britain was one of the main persons like if
What
they
was that
want.
called for? What was that name? There's a name given to it.
I
There's
don't
an
remember
axe.
the name.
The navigation axe?
Oh yeah, that's it.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
Yes, that thing. So yeah, would that be one of the reasons that could account for like Britain's leadership because of how they were kind of controlling their colonials, like their market, being that they were kind of using them to only like take their goods, as in like could that be a reason?
That is a wonderful reason, and that could be a reason, right? So remember, the colonies themselves, even though they were colonies of Britain, right? Or if you had France, if you're speaking about the French colonies or whatever, right? They were still governed by governors. so they could trade with other colonies from other powers, and they could trade with other countries. Now, Britain put in the Navigation Act, right, that would it's basically forcing the colonies to buy only British products and to send their most valuable assets only to Britain. So that would have helped. So direct colonial trade, right? So remember, this would have led to the Enlightenment principle, speaking about laissez-faire, which is a free trade, right? So remember, that was another Enlightenment principle. So we're speaking about the fact that Britain controlled the trade over all of her colonies, directing all the value, right, to her borders, right, and to send all of her materials, for example, tea, right? Tea was forced upon, right, the different colonies, and only British tea should be bought. So stuff like that. All right, go ahead. Somebody raised your hand. Go ahead, Nasha.
So would the policy of mercantilism be applied with this?
Yes, it could. It could use mercantilism. Where remember, we're just looking at how Britain used her colonies to to finance industrial revolution. So if you want to talk about a direct influence or indirect influence, it's still an influence. Go ahead.
Was it true that Britain kind of restricted like the information, but like the fact? I don't know what it was, but like some of like the inventions and things like that, they kind of
Censorship.
it. Repeat.
Censorship. So they censored the information relating to what, how the processes were done.
Yes, when I was my teacher was teaching us for American like industrialization, they were saying that at one point Britain was kind of censoring the information and they didn't want it to get out. Could that have been like something that aided in their leadership, being that they were kind of restricting that information from getting out?
It could be, because if I have a secret formula to success, why would I want my rivals to get a hand of it? Right? So it could be something like that. I would understand how or why they would have restricted information from getting out, because once it gets out, the rivals will have it. Right? So it makes sense. Yes, it does make sense. But I don't think that would be attributed specifically to the question, because the question is asking for the 3 external factors that are accounted for. So censorship, I guess you could probably put a 1 sentence in on it, but I'm not sure if it will fit this question the best. Go ahead, somebody raise your hand.
I would say the opposite to that question would be like absorption of global knowledge. So instead of them classifying or censoring their information, they would have been around the world, basically picking up on what other countries were doing, and they would come back to England and further develop on it.
Okay, so you had colonial and diplomatic espionage, right? So you're
Yes.
speaking out wonderful. So Britain had controlled 3/4 of the world at this time, right? So remember, the sun cannot set on the British Empire, or would not have set on the English Empire at this time, right? On the British Empire, because each area, right, on the globe, you can find a British colony, right? Each area on the globe. So they would have garnered this vast amount of knowledge to propel their scientific endeavors, right, and to feed this type of industrial fever, right, within the British Isles. But that could be, even though I would call that, it's really on the board of a strong point, weak point. I would just categorize it as a weak point, right? But it's a point no less, and it can get you the 2 marks, right? Because remember, it's 6 marks now, so 2 marks per idea. So it can get you the 2 marks, so it's fine. So that's wonderful. We can move on to the next question. With a reference to document 2, discuss 3 impacts of the British Industrial Revolution on the Caribbean. What were the impacts here? Impacts of British. Go ahead.
I think would it like help with the abolition of slavery, because British industrials saw slavery as backwards and wanted the slaves to be free so them can partake in the manufactured goods.
Wonderful. We speak about industrialists and the abolition movement. Remember, Don't only read the document, read the source. This is from Eric Williams' Capitalism and Slavery. You could mention that about the source, right? You could mention that about the source. So wonderful. Would you want to expound on that a little bit more? How did industrialization bring an end to the plantocracy?
So the industrialists, many of the industrialists wanted like slaves
Mm-hmm.
to. They basically wanted the system of slavery to be abolished, so they could gain more revenue from the slaves,
How would they
which
gain
would
more
help them
revenue?
no, not revenue, but more money
Yeah, but how would
from the
they
slaves
gain
who
the revenue or money?
would they,
9 mark question, so it's a bit larger. So
yeah.
how? No, I understand what you're saying and know
Uh,
that you know it, but just articulate it.
mm, you have to come back on me with that. You have to come back with me.
All right, no problem. Go ahead, Fantasia.
So it would have shifted their economic focus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Basically meaning that these countries, for instance, the Caribbean, because we are talking about the Caribbean, we would have basically had Britain as our main, what would I call that? They would have been the ones taking most of the goods from us, right? And we would
Yeah.
have benefited from that. So now that they're focused on their own industrialization and they would have been focusing on selling other goods, we have to now find other means and ways and other products
Mm-hmm.
to trade with other countries so we can still survive.
All right. So it would the end of industrialization would have brought the end of slavery, right? Due to the industrialists putting their backing and their money, right, into abolitionist movements, right? That would eventually lead up to the abolition of the slave trade, and then the abolition of slavery, right? So that would have been a major change across the British Caribbean. Please note that the Caribbean is not British alone, so we can't do that, right? The British Caribbean specifically. So we're seeing here that within the British Caribbean, slavery was abolished, right? And that will allow for new avenues. It will kickstart the peasantry, diversifying the economy of Caribbean countries, right? So you could speak about that as well. Our Caribbean colonies, sorry, they're not countries. Well, technically, sure, but they're colonies at this time, right? The Caribbean colonies diversification. Remember peasantry diversification, right? So it won't only be logwood and indigo and sugarcane and coffee coming from the colonies, right? There would be yams and pineapples and breadfruits and bananas and remember that after industrialization started, right? There would have been some more focus on getting food from other areas and colonies. So the Caribbean, the British Caribbean, would have been known, right, for that specifically. For example, up until Maurice Bishop's takeover, right, or so-called liberation of Grenada, right, in his revolution, Grenada has been selling bananas to Britain for centuries, right? You could speak about the growth of the other diversified industries within the Caribbean, which will help some amount of economic growth within the Caribbean as well. So if you want to make sure that the examiner knows that you have a good hold on history, right, you don't only put all bad and all good, right? You probably try to mix them to show that you can handle, right, the interpretation of the history, right? You could also speak to the fact that okay, let me not speak too much. Anybody else has anything to say about this? We spoke about the economic impacts of the Industrial Revolution. Are there any? Well, the social impact would have been the ending of slavery as well. Are there any political impacts or other social or economic impacts? Go ahead.
Some countries would over time change their system of government.
System of government. I'm not sure if that would be I don't understand what you're saying, so I'm gonna ask you to explain what you're saying.
So all right, this is too modern, but it's something along the lines of basically like Barbados removing Britain completely from their government.
I get what you're saying, but how did the British Industrial Revolution impact that? Are you saying that okay? Are you saying that, for instance, the Industrial Revolution, right, um, would have abolished slavery, specifically within the British Caribbean, and then this would have fueled the economies of Britain and her colonies to some extent, and this would have increased the degree of independence, leading to emancipation movements. That's like a
Yes. A
yeah
domino effect.
a domino. Oh, okay,
I was thinking along the lines of that. Hopefully the examiner bear with me.
all right. It's a domino effect. All right, go ahead. Somebody raise your hand.
Uh, I don't know if this would work, but Britain
Mm-hmm.
was considered like an international bank at the time, and when they loan money to these Caribbean countries, or these Caribbean countries in the Caribbean, they would directly influence the politics in the Caribbean. Would that
Mm-hmm.
work?
Okay, that could be a thing of it, because if it is the industrialists that have the complete control, well, majority of the control over the economic sectors, and the private sector became a huge thing in industrialization. So the private sector would have some say in political leadership and political direction of a colony or a country. So that could be a part of it, right? That could be a part of it, because with the growth of companies and industries, right? Then there, remember the growth of corporations within American industrialization. It's something like that. Because remember, there were these, I think, 7 families, right, that got extremely rich off of railroads and steam engines and stuff like that, that are still the top families in the world as we speak, right, from the industrialization till now, right. So you could speak about the
Yeah,
growth of the private sector
and in
and their influence on political systems. Go ahead.
yeah,
All right, so that's it. All right, that's fine.
yeah.
So examine the reasons for the United States of occupation of Haiti in 1917. Do you guys know about this? Would you guys? Well, I mean, if you did, go ahead.
I was saying in a sense.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. My teacher was saying that one of the reasons was, I guess you could link it back to like the Monroe Doctrine.
I mean, I would like you to continue.
Oh, continue. Okay, so basically, my understanding of the doctrine is that it kind of asserted America's right to intervene in the affairs of like Latin Americans if it kind of threatened their security, and I believe um Haiti has like a history of like political instability, especially in terms of like the debt and everything. So I learned that US in fear that um which country was Haiti in debt for, like France, that
France.
France would further their kind of control over Haiti. They kind of got involved because they knew that if France got control over Haiti again, it would kind of threaten
Hmm.
their security, which was one of the reasons why they intervened. I don't know how, because I still didn't get to go over that.
All right. Who was president at this time? President Woodrow Wilson sent U.S. Marines to restore order in Haiti, right? In the occupation, right, of Haiti the occupation of 1915 till 1934. Why was this? It was also due to Haiti's instability, as well as German influence within Haiti. German influence, right, actually breached, or struck a note, right, with the Monroe Doctrine. So Germany an European power, right, had increased influence over Haiti specifically, right, economically, right, with the development of commercial businesses that dominated Haiti, right. So we could note that German influence in Haiti made Germany a political and an economical, well, a mostly economical rival in the Caribbean. And as we said, Monroe Doctrine, can't have that, right? Manifest Destiny, we can't have that, right? So what was happening, right, was that the US specifically noted that there was some amount of instability, and they used this political instability within Haiti as a justification for the invasion of Haiti in 1915. All right, and they actually suggested that they annexed the entire island of Hispaniola and the Dominican Republic. All right, so Hispaniola with the Dominican Republic and Haiti on it. All right, and remember that they tried this with which nation?
With Cuba?
They tried it with Cuba, right? A couple of years before. When did Cuba gain independence? Come on, guys, when did Cuba gain independence? Wrong. I'm so sorry. I'm really flabbergasted at the moment. When did Cuba gain independence?
Is it
Is it?
is it
It's a
like in
question?
the 1900s?
No.
19
Date.
it's a
Date.
19
Date.
80,
What's the date?
uh,
Day, month, and year. The date is really easy to remember. That's why I'm asking for the date.
it's in the 1898.
No,
Or
man.
1898.
Somebody, please tell me. No, man. Come with something a little bit better. Cuban independence? I'm talking about. Go ahead.
May 20, 1902.
1902. All right. So you could speak about that. And when did Fidel Castro take power? Well, we're gonna catch up on our Cuba history now, but alright, we could just keep it there for now. So we're seeing that the United States primarily failed, right? Epic fail with Cuba a couple years before. Right? So this I wouldn't call it insurgents. This influenced by Germany, right? Was not like they were not having it, right? Having a major fail with Cuba and then losing Haiti to the Germans, they were not going to have it. So they said, okay, right? We're going to take control of Haiti. We're gonna occupy Haiti to make sure that European influence doesn't breach the Monroe Doctrine, right? Again, we're going to take Haiti to make sure that Germany doesn't create a colony out of Haiti and breach Manifest Destiny. And we're going to take Haiti on the grounds that there's political instability and Haiti is in our backyard. Right? So I know that a majority of you guys will not do the essay question right here. I know that majority won't do the essay question right here. You probably do the document question and then do the two other essays. But it's a whole debacle, and it's something that I don't think a lot of persons know about the the United States occupation of Haiti in 1915, but it did happen.
Wait, I think they asked a question about Dominican Republic. Would they give another question like this? I'm asking. Do you think they would? And so, what country?
Yes, because I haven't seen the Grenadian Revolution in a while. I haven't seen Maurice Bishop on a paper in a while.
What is Grenada?
What do you mean by what? I haven't seen. Remember Maurice Bishop and his communist thing? Nobody. Right. Maurice Bishop never on the set. Maurice Bishop not on the set. Don't play now. Isn't he?
If they bring Maurice Bishop, if I see Bishop tomorrow, I'm going to cry.
Oh man,
Let me put out my syllabus. It appears that we're looking at the syllabus.
You don't have Grenadian Revolution, Cuban Revolution.
Which syllabus?
Wait, is whichever. Wait, hold on. Is it Unit 1 I'm talking about? Unit 1 stop at Haiti.
I'm pretty sure it's not Unit 2. I'm looking at the Unit 2 syllabus right now because I have a checklist and that
It's
is
not in
not.
there?
It is not there.
What? I went with the history. Wait, the history
Don't
to
play
it.
with my syllabus.
It's not on the syllabus?
Do not play with my syllabus.
Oh! Oh, is it not on the syllabus? Wait. I went through entire lectures with those topics. So I'm not. Okay, sure. It's not on the syllabus. Okay. That's fine. You win. Y'all win. Right? But Cuba is on the syllabus.
Where? Which
Cuba
page?
is not on the syllabus. Wait. I don't understand what you mean. Which syllabus you have?
Tell you what is on the syllabus. It said, United States intervention in Latin America up to 1970. They did not specify a country.
Oh, so any country can come then. And the US intervened in
Like that.
Jamaica, in Haiti, in the Dominican Republic, in Cuba, in Grenada. We can list
When
them.
in Jamaica,
Well, it wasn't as plain in sight. It's actually debated about, what happened to. Not gonna say anything. The video is being recorded.
There's a
But
very good solution for this though.
mhm.
Just don't do any question that says intervention.
All right.
Simple.
but
All you
what if
do when the question come, you just write no thank you on the paper.
we can do that?
No, but okay. I mean, you can write it on the paper, but you're still going to get a
You're
grade.
still having hope.
But you should be fine though. Alright, so that's module 1, right?
Unfortunately.
Alright. Okay. So that is module 1.